Welcome back to Leveraging Leadership, where we unpack the art of business leadership. I'm your host, Emily Sander, Chief of Staff turned Executive Leadership Coach. I work with people to help them step into effective leadership and realize their professional and personal goals. If you have known failure and success, if you have had good bosses and bad bosses, if you are a high achiever and want new ideas, and if you want the practical and tactical side of things, then you are in the right place. This show is all about finding your points of greatest influence and leveraging them to better serve those around you. Have you ever sat there as chief of staff and thought, all right, I'm working on these projects, I'm working on these types of things, and they're all well and fine, but are there projects and initiatives a chief of staff is supposed to be working on? What do other chiefs of staff typically work on? What are the strategic initiatives a chief of staff should be involved in, if not spearheading? All right, so the classic chief of staff answer is, it depends. But here are some hallmarks that I want to run through with you. The first one is anything to do with a reorg. So if your company or team or department is going through a reorganization, that is something a chief of staff can and should be involved with. You are the chief of staff. So the structure of your individuals, your teams, your departments, your company as a whole should be under your purview, or at least you should be informed, if not involved in those things. And the thing you want to think about here is, what is the structure or framework that best supports your strategy? So what's the mechanism, what's the setup that best helps you execute to the outcome you want, the objectives you want? So once you have that in place, and that evolves and moves with different market conditions or different stages of the company or different people and leaders coming in and out of the company, all these different things, that can be dynamic. So it could make perfect sense to do a reorg to best support the strategy. Once you have a good structure in place, then it's about getting the right talent in the right seats. So you have the structure, and now you're saying, okay, to further the strategy, to execute toward our goals, what types of talent do we need to have where? This might be internally, we need to shuffle some folks around. All right, we have good talent in the company, but they're kind of in the wrong departments, or maybe they're in the right department, but they're in the wrong role within that department. Let's align those types of things. Of course, it could be bringing in outside talent, so you make some external hires to bring talent into your team and infuse those into your company. Once you have the structure in place and you have the talent you want in the right seats, oftentimes it's about developing that talent into skill. So sometimes you have raw talent, you have potential, and you need to give it the tools and the training and the mentorship it takes to get them to be skilled to where you need them to be. So that's where a chief of staff could be involved with onboarding and or training. So learning and development, onboarding, training, whatever it's called in your organization. This can certainly be in conjunction with HR, or if you have a full-blown learning and development program at your work, then that's fantastic. But those are things that a chief of staff can be involved with as well. And it directly has to do with the staff and how they're set up for success. The next one would be product rollouts. So this is one of my favorites. I've mentioned it a couple times on this podcast, but it's because you're so connected to different parts of the business. So if you're spearheading product rollouts, you're obviously in touch with the product or tech teams. You are in touch with finance about the pricing and the margins, et cetera. You are talking to sales operations to get that in contracts and get the sales team informed about how to sell this product. You're talking to the sales team about the feedback you're getting about the new product. You are obviously going with marketing for campaigns to front run the sales efforts, and then the operations or delivery teams on how to deliver that product once someone buys it. So you're very much in the hub of the wheel, and there's lots of spokes pointing out. The close cousin of product rollout would be sales operations. So sales operations, this is good because you're close to the action, and your boss, the leadership team, and the board are going to want to know how sales are going. So that's a perennial question that you'll get and need to answer. If you are closely aligned to that work, then you can answer directly. It's not, oh, let me go check with someone, or, oh, I read that report, let me remind myself what that said. Or maybe you're 2 or 3 levels removed from that. No. If you're in charge of sales operations, you're very close to that information. And so you can give a more direct and a more fulsome answer. So as chief of staff, I was involved in product rollouts and sales operations for periods of time. And let me tell you, when I was in board meetings, I had that information available in my head, or I could quickly get to it and answer a question. Now, later on, it made sense for me to hand off some of these pieces to new talent we brought into the organization who were experts and more skilled in these areas. And so then I relied on those folks, which was fantastic. But for a period, I was in charge of that stuff and I had that information right there. Okay, the next strategic initiative that a chief of staff should be involved with would be M&A or strategic partnerships. And sometimes this is called like the deal team, or there's different names for this. But basically, when you're going out and you're saying, all right, does it make sense for us to acquire a company, or does it make sense for us to merge with a company? So some companies are very acquisitive and they say our strategy, our market strategy is to gobble up the market share and just pull these competitors into our umbrella and do it that way. Sometimes it's all right, we're looking for the huge merger where we're going to do, full rebrand and a full synergy, and that's going to be the biggest thing we do for the next 24 months. So depending on what you're looking for there, or even if you're looking for a white label solution where, they specialize in the product that our customers are asking for. So if we can white label that into our product suite, that's going to make sense for us. So being part of that is a great place for a chief of staff to be. I had a chief of staff who was talking about this, saying, Emily, this kind of makes me a little bit removed from the business. So I'm not sure if I want to be involved in that. And I encourage this person to take that on, because not only are you part of the strategic discussions of, does this make sense for us to acquire? Does it make financial sense? Does it make go forward planning sense? All these different things. And then their strategy was, we want that big merger. So we're looking for a game-changing, industry-changing merger, and that could take months and 18 months of vetting and 24 months of waiting for the right one and just making sure this is going to go well. But once they do that, guess who's going to be in charge of the integration? So the full integration with something like that is soup to nuts. You've got the rebranding, you've got the legal piece, you have the financing, you have the tech stack integration, you've got the product suite. Okay, how do these map over? You have the cross-sell, upsell between client bases. You have the marketing and media and interviews and all that stuff. And so being involved in those initial discussions sets you up really, really well to be on point for the integration of that merger. So I would absolutely encourage people to be involved in that. All right. The ringleader, the humdinger, the hallmark strategic initiative that I would say chiefs of staff should be involved with is strategic planning. Strategic planning, you've got to be on point for this, or at least involved. And this is one of those things where I would push your way in, or I would just start doing proactively. And then that's just the way it is, because it's so important. It's so crucial for a chief of staff to be involved in this. So the strategic plan lends itself to, of course, you're part of the strategic discussions. So why are we here? Why do we exist? Where are we trying to get to? What customers are we serving? What is our 18 or 12-month goal? What's our plan to get there? How do each team and each department contribute to that? And then you are, of course, going from strategic to tactical, and you are part of that tactical execution. Following that, an important piece here, you are on point for the ongoing communication and ongoing check-ins for the strategic plan. A lot of companies will do a really great planning session in January and then promptly forget about that until next December, when they're scrambling to try to get their goals and KPIs and all those things aligned. A chief of staff doesn't let that happen. So they are part of the conversations, ideally in Q4 of the previous year, for the go forward plan for the following year. And then they certainly are part of that decision-making process. They're facilitating the brainstorming sessions. They're facilitating the strategic planning sessions with the leadership team. And then they have ongoing cadence, ongoing touch points with the leadership team, with executive team, with mid-level management, with the rank and file folks, all throughout the year to keep that thing alive. Strategic planning is the epitome of I am part of the strategic decision-making process, I am a strategic leader, and I am part of the tactical execution of that plan. I am operationalizing strategy. That is my job as chief of staff. That is your job as chief of staff, is to operationalize strategy, and being part of that strategic planning is something you should absolutely go for. One of the cool elements of being part of strategic planning is you are in a position where you're communicating the strategy and you're communicating priorities to the rest of the business. And that's a really good spot for the chief of staff to be in. That is one of your main functions. And if you're able to provide context to various teams and they're asking, why are we doing this? Or what goal does that get us toward? You're well suited to answer that question. And the answer to that question is a little bit different for each team, right? They contribute to the overall vision and strategy a little bit differently. But you are in prime position to have those conversations because one, you've been part of the strategic discussions, and two, you're part of the execution of it. And three, you should have these touch points with all these various levels of teams and team members throughout the year. And so having those conversations is where things come to life, where things get exciting, where things are dynamic. You have this double feedback loop. So it's not just a one-way street of communication. You're also feeding information and collecting information up from the different teams and bringing that information to leadership for potential changes or updates or adapting the plan. So all of that is where a chief of staff lives and breathes and goes from strategic to tactical and back again. Okay, let me slow down because I just got really excited. So, whoosh. We have reorgs. We have onboarding and training efforts. We've got product rollouts and also sales operations. We have mergers and acquisitions, sometimes called strategic partnerships or deal teams. And the humdinger of them all would be strategic planning. And if you're like strategic planning, let me get my head around that. I do have a checklist. So a strategic planning checklist in the show notes in the link below. So check that out if you'd like. Okay, so if you're listening to this and you're like, all right, I'm hearing the best strategic initiatives to be involved in. How do I do that, Emily? How do I get myself in position or how do I get myself involved in those? I'm happy to jump on a free 30-minute clarity call with you and we can bounce ideas about how you do that, give you some good next steps. If you're like, I'm involved in all these already, but I'm not quite locked in, I'm not optimizing each of these strategic initiatives, then I'm happy to talk to you about that as well. And if you're going, all right, I actually can be involved in all of those, but in my certain setup, in this certain company, it doesn't make sense for me to be involved in all of those. I have the opportunity for all of them, but I need to choose which ones should I choose in my particular setup. Then I would love to talk to you about that as well. So we can have a chat. I can give you some ideas. We can soundboard together. We can come up with next steps or things for you to try. And that link will be in the show notes below. Otherwise, go forth, be good chiefs of staff, be good leaders, and I will talk to you next week on leveraging leadership.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.